A massive manhunt is underway this morning for suspects in the killing of a Maryland police officer. The Baltimore County officer, who has not been identified, was responding to reports of a suspicious vehicle yesterday when police say she was critically injured. She later died in the hospital. The cause of her death is unknown. Investigators recovered a black Jeep at the scene that may be owned by a suspect. Witnesses say it was used to run over the officer. Police are now reviewing footage from her body camera.
A death row inmate in California is getting high-profile support for a new round of DNA tests that could help exonerate him. Kevin Cooper was convicted for the 1983 murders of 4 people outside of Los Angeles. He says he was framed. Senator Kamala Harris said in a statement, quote, "I hope the governor and the state will allow for such testing in the case of Kevin Cooper." Erin Moriarty of 48 Hours has covered this case for nearly 20 years. Erin, good morning.
I know this case well. We began investigating this story after I received a letter from Kevin Cooper himself back in 1999. He was convinced then that DNA tests would prove his innocence, but when the results came back, they were not what he had hoped for. It was called the Chino Hills Massacre. On June 4th, 1983, Doug and Peggy Ryan, both 41, were found in their home hacked to death, along with their 10-year-old daughter Jessica and a young neighbor, 11-year-old Christopher Hughes. 8-year-old Josh Ryan's throat was cut, but somehow he lived. 3 weapons were used, and Josh Ryan initially told investigators there were 3 attackers.
My throat was slashed here, and I got stabbed here and hit by an axe here.
But the multiple assailant theory was abandoned when investigators discovered Kevin Cooper next door. He had been hiding out after escaping from prison on a burglary conviction. And in February 1985, Cooper was convicted of the murders. Although serious questions remain. How did Cooper manage to use 3 weapons at once?
He's ambidextrous. He could use either hand equally well. Ambidextrous.
Cooper's fingerprints were not found anywhere, just a single drop of blood that a state expert said was Cooper's. But most troubling is the revelation that there was evidence pointing to another suspect. And at testimony at trial, it was learned a sheriff's deputy destroyed it.
And I looked down and here was these coveralls, and I picked them up. And as I picked them up, the more I picked them up, then I saw the blood.
When Diana Roper, now deceased, found bloody clothing belonging to her boyfriend, a man with a violent criminal history, she turned them in. Floyd Tidwell was the sheriff. Wouldn't you say that taking in coveralls that appear to be covered with blood, not sending them to lab, and throwing them away before trial would be highly unusual?
I don't know that that happened.
That did happen.
I'm very, very vague on that.
In the early 2000s, the state conducted DNA tests on evidence from the case, and the results matched Cooper. Does that make you feel confident that Kevin Cooper was definitely involved in this?
Yeah.
But not everyone agrees. Cooper's attorneys believe that new and advanced DNA testing on existing evidence, including hair samples and blood, could support the theory that there were multiple people involved in the murders. And there are many, including a federal appeals court judge, who believe that the evidence that was previously tested back in 2002 could have been planted. The governor is reviewing Cooper's request for additional DNA testing. And I should point out the defense will pay for it, the testing. This is a very tough case.
Yeah, and so this story's far from over.
It definitely is.
All right, thank you, Erin.